You can't reason with fungus, but you can shoot it. Let's get it. HBO's The Last of Us has hooked audiences with nearly perfect silver screen storytelling. This post-apocalyptic mushroom zombie masterpiece may be the best video game to film adaptation ever produced. But as a certified gun nut, one of the most fascinating aspects for the show for me is the firearms. Each one plays a role in shaping the gritty world we're thrown into. As we gear up for the show's highly anticipated second season, let's embark on a weapons voyage of discovery. Join me as we break down the firearms of The Last of Us, episode by episode, gun by gun. This is the first scene of the show with a firearm. We have the main character Joel, accompanied by his brother Tommy, holding a rifle. And here we can see Tommy with this bolt-action rifle at the ready, not looking down the scope, finger on the trigger, but at least he's using the sling for support, so it's a bolt-action sporting style rifle. But which one? Here we get a pretty good look at the bolt and can clearly see the safety. That, my friends, is a Remington 700. And Tommy's Remington 700 has this nifty little cartridge sleeve on the stock. It looks like one round is missing, and from the size of those bullets, I'm guessing the rifle is most likely chambered in .308 Winchester. I just so happen to have my very own example of a Remington 700 chambered in .308 NATO, and this is one of only a couple sporting rifles I have in my collection. These rifles are one of the all-time most popular bolt-action designs. They've been in service with the military, used by police forces all over the country and the world, and of course they're ubiquitous on the civilian market. In my opinion, as we're about to see, the Remington 700 is basically one of the stars of the show. This is Bill, and we'll dive more in depth on Bill's character in just a moment. But while we're talking about Remington 700s, we can't forget Bill's example. So here's Bill in the rain, looking down the scope, finger at the ready. He again has a sporting example of the rifle, but his might not be quite as nice as Tommy's. Like Tommy though, Bill has also equipped his rifle with a cartridge sleeve on the stock. I think the Remington 700 may just be the only firearm in the series called by name. Of course, we just mentioned Tommy's at the beginning, but if we fast forward until later in the series, he brings it up again.
It's a turkey shoot. Still got my 700, but I found a variable power scope. Sub-MOA.
The 700 is known for accuracy, but I'm not quite sure about half-mile shots. Here's Tommy with his same Remington 700 more than 20 years later. As he said, he's upgraded his scope, but it is the same rifle. And here Tommy's handing off his prized 700 to his brother Joel. This beautiful example of a Remington 700 BDL is front and center in this clip, accompanied by our two main characters of the show, Ellie and Joel. Joel's attempting to teach his young companion the proper way to shoot a rifle, and here we finally get to see Joel behind the rifle himself, with Ellie doing a little bit of spotting.
It's gonna work, it doesn't aim right. You dick.
I love this shot of Joel and Ellie on horseback, and a good side profile of the Remington 700. And here Ellie finally gets to put it to use. I thought it was a nice touch they included a hunting scene with this rifle, since it is predominantly considered a hunting rifle. Here's one last shot of Ellie doing her best to hold up this awesome rifle. Now let's circle back around to Tommy at the beginning of the show.
I'm sorry.
Please don't.
I'm pretty sure that was our first on-screen use of a firearm, and that actually leads us into our next gun, which we can catch a glimpse of here on this U.S. Army soldier. This is a standard U.S. Army issue M4 rifle, and the M16/M4 family of rifles may be the most abundant firearms in the entire show. Here's some Fedra soldiers in the Boston quarantine zone, and every single one of them is armed with either an M4 or an M16. This guy's rifle almost looks like it has an OD green A2 stock with a full-length M16 barrel. Here's a Fedra rooftop sniper with a scoped M16 variant, and we catch a glimpse here of Joel doing a deal with a Fedra soldier toting a very important M4 rifle. This is the same soldier with the same gun, but we can get a really good look at it here. And our very next clip here is why I say that particular M4 was so important. You can see Joel picking it up off the ground here. It has now become his, and in turn, one of our cast members. I wanted to quickly mention this shot that stood out. It's an Indonesian soldier holding what looks like an M16A2. That was from a flashback before the fall of humanity. We are back in the apocalyptic wasteland with this one. Joel has his M4 shouldered and is looking down the sights at one of our infected Cordyceps zombies. These guys are terrifying. After that run-in with the clickers, we move back outside for some beauty shots. This is a fantastic side profile of this M4, and I absolutely love how you can see all this wear on the rifle. The finish is worn to the point where you can see the underlying aluminum. It would make sense for a Fedra M4 to be super worn because they've literally been carried all day, every day for 20 years. Sadly, Joel decides not long after to ditch the M4.
What are you doing?
There's not much ammo out there for this thing. Makes it mostly useless.
Now, he just said he was getting rid of that rifle because there wasn't that much ammo out there for it anymore. Meanwhile, 5.56 NATO or 223 Remington, the round that the M16 and M4 shoot, is one of the most ubiquitous cartridges on planet Earth. It is most certainly one of the most popular rifle cartridges here in North America, but this ammunition is used by law enforcement and military everywhere. Although 20 years deep in an apocalyptic world, ammo is certainly going to be in short supply. I don't think for a second there would be any rifle I would rather have than one chambered in 5.56. And there's a lot of characters in the show that share that opinion. Here we have a Kansas City rebel sporting a worn M4 with red dot sight. We have our man Perry, M4 at the ready, and a whole bunch of 5.56 chambered rifles in the hands of the Kansas City rebels. Even though Joel decided to ditch his M4 pretty early on, it didn't stop him from picking another one up later. After the M4, the next gun we encounter chronologically is one of the most important firearms in the entire series, and that's this revolver, which happens to be the primary sidearm of our main character, Joel. Here's Joel in a hallway holding the revolver, but what revolver is it? If we look back at this clip and pay attention to the grip, we can see a little shiny bit on there. That little metal embellishment on the grip is very indicative of a Taurus revolver. Of course, it would be extremely difficult to ID that gun off the grip alone, but it just so happens that Joel's primary sidearm in the video game is a Taurus Model 66 .357 Magnum revolver, the same gun they used in the TV series. This one has Joel with his Model 66 aimed at Ellie of all people, and a fantastic shot of Joel reloading his revolver with a creepy mushroom zombie around the corner. Revolvers get high points for durability. They're rugged and reliable, but their ammo capacity pretty much sucks, and they're slow to reload. I will say, if you were going to pick a revolver in a post-apocalyptic world, a .357 chambered one would be a pretty smart choice, because not only can they fire .357 ammo, they can also fire .38 special ammo, and that gives you a lot more options. What do you guys think about the practicality of a revolver being your sidearm in a situation like this? I still think I would go for the capacity of an autoloader. This is one of my favorite Taurus shots of the series. Joel protecting Ellie and Ellie lighting the way. It also happens to lead into a terrifying scene. We have an outstanding side profile of the Taurus Model 66 in this clip, and Joel brandishing his handgun of choice in Kansas City. As we move through the first season here, the next gun we encounter is one I've wanted personally forever. This is Marlene, resistance fighter and head of the Fireflies in Boston, and she just finished up sifting through a pile of guns, selecting her preferred choice, and that's what we have here, a SIG P226. The 226 by SIG is a fantastic firearm. They're chambered in the readily available 9mm NATO cartridge. They have decent magazine capacity and world-class reliability and accuracy. There's a reason the 226 became so popular amongst law enforcement and military units. Here's a wounded Marlene holding her 226, joined by another Firefly. However, I can't quite make out this other gun. Perhaps it's a 1911 variant or a Browning high power. I suppose it could be something else though. If you know, let me know down in the comments. Marlene is not the only character we see with the 226 on their side in the series. This is David, who we don't get to know until much later, but he is carrying a SIG P226. And here's a clip of this old school 226 without the added in accessory rail. Marlene still has a 226 at the end of the season. However, this might be a different example than she had earlier, because this one does not have an accessory rail. This is a beautiful shot though, maybe the best firearm shot of the series. But then we circle back around to this image of Marlene with her 226 pointed at Joel and Tess. And speaking of Tess, that leads us into the next gun on our list. This is our first real shot of Tess with gun in hand, but the light is obscuring it a little bit, making it hard to make out. On this clip though, we can clearly tell we're dealing with a 1911 variant. Tess's sidearm of choice is a Colt Defender, a subcompact 1911. Some are chambered in 9mm, some are chambered in 45, but like any 1911, they are single action only and have a single stack magazine, meaning they have a very limited rounds count. The compact Colt Defender is a nice size for a woman's hands though. This shot resembles a hostage situation, but we can get a good front-on view of Tess's Colt Defender here, and it's even more clear in this shot. Apparently the Defender played an important role in the video game also. I wonder if Tess's Defender is 9mm or 45 though. This is Ellie's friend Riley showing off her Colt Defender in her waistline, and in this one, Riley's getting ready to put it to use. I think the infected from this series are among the scariest ever put on screen. They're up there with 28 Days Later. I can't help it, but AK variant rifles always catch my eye. And in this shot, we have Tess picking up an AK pattern rifle. It looks to have a taped grip and that very characteristic curved magazine. Instead of firing this AK, she immediately goes on to doing what it does best, bludgeoning.
What are you doing?
Making sure that they don't follow you.
Here's Tess using the AK butt to knock open a gas can. We then get this really good look at what kind of AK we're dealing with. I tried to ID it, but I was having a hard time. The sling looks like it might be Russian. I noticed there's no kind of muzzle brake, and it looks to have a closed front sight. Perhaps it's Chinese, perhaps it's Russian, or who knows, it could be something else. We briefly met Bill earlier with the Remington 700, but with Bill comes what is probably the richest firearm scene in the series, period. See, the thing about Bill is, he's a prepper. Maybe you would call it a survivalist. But Bill has a lot of guns. Here's Bill in his armory compound, checking out his monitors, and the wall behind him is absolutely littered with super cool firearms. We also see a ton of ammunition on the far wall. I gotta say, I'm pretty jealous of Bill. There's just so much to dig into here. But you cannot miss that British L1A1 SLR. That's a British FAL. We have what looks like an AK magazine, what is most certainly an M1 Garand. And in this shot, we can make out a Steyr AUG, an M1 carbine, a scoped AR, what looks like it might be an AR-10 with a carry handle, and a bolt-action rifle, which looks to me to be a Mosin Nagant. He has a Glock 17 stripped and ready for cleaning on his workbench. And here's Ellie in front of our wall of glory. I think that's an Ivor Johnson revolver. We have a Glock 26, a sporterized Model M 1917 Enfield. That's a really weird one, but this one lonely pistol under the M1 carbine really caught my eye. I believe that is a 9mm Walther P38. And by the grip cover on Bill's example, it looks like one from World War II. Of course, the P38 was Nazi Germany's primary sidearm in the Second World War, and they are extremely collectible handguns. Probably a good thing it stayed on the wall of guns though, because these rather large service guns just have a single stack magazine and don't really have the capacity you would want in a survival situation. I see another Glock, a couple 1911s, a shotgun. There are literally too many guns in Bill's armory to cover them all in this video. I think Ellie's comment here pretty much sums it up.
Dude.
No.
There's a wall of them.
Bill has a buttload of firearms, but now let's take a look at a couple that he actually uses. So we're back in the bunker, and Bill has what looks like a shotgun. Checking out the side of Bill's shotgun here, it looks very familiar to me, and that's because I have one. This is a Remington Model 870 pump action shotgun, and it just so happens to be Bill's home defense option of choice. It was the first firearm he put his hands on when the poo hit the fan, and I can't say I really blame him for that. It's hard to beat a 12 gauge for protecting what's yours. We get a better look at Bill's 870 here. It looks like a police model with the corncob front grip and wood stock. I find it interesting that the sling he's using actually appears to be a U.S. military surplus sling, like the sling of American surplus rifles like the M1 Garand. Here, Bill has his 870 drawn on a character that will become important, and while we take a last look at Bill's Remington 870, we can also catch a glance of his preferred home defense sidearm in his drop leg holster. Here's Bill with his pistol drawn on a Frank crawling out of one of Bill's booby traps, and here we can see Bill is carrying an M1911 pistol. Bill's pistol appears to be a 1911 A1, extremely similar to the one I have here. Big bore 45 caliber automatic, two-time World War champ. It's hard to beat the 1911. From a cool factor standpoint, at least. I will mention I do not like Bill's shooting grip. For one thing, he has his finger on the trigger, but in a situation like this, that might be justified. The big issue is that he's resting his gun hand in his offhand. That's just bad form. You should know better, Bill. Here's our always ready Bill, handled his 1911, had a nice dinner with Joel, Frank, and Tess, and we can tell here that he doesn't exactly look happy to have company. I can see making an argument for using a 1911 for home defense. The 45 auto cartridge is no joke in terms of knockdown power, and when defending the homestead, you might not need the higher capacity of more modern designs. Although I love this gun, if we're looking at it from an apocalyptic survival standpoint, I don't think the 1911 is the best choice. For one thing, it's too darn heavy to lug around. These all-steel pistols weigh something like 42 ounces. You are again limited by that 7 or 8 round magazine capacity, and if we're talking about government models like this one, although they are really good shooting pistols, they have really outdated sights. Later in the series, we encounter a character named Henry, and this is Henry with his 1911 government model in hand, and we get another good look at it when he meets Joel and Ellie for the first time.
We don't want to hurt you. We want to help you.
Okay.
The next gun we'll discuss, once again, had its introduction at Bill's compound, but it's not Bill's gun. Here's Frank loading a relatively small pistol, and in our next clip here, he's coming to the rescue of Bill with that same pistol in his hand. The next time we see that handgun will be one of the most important firearm moments in the series. That was Ellie uncovering her iconic sidearm. What pistol is it exactly though? Well, with my first watch through of the show, I thought there might be a chance that it was the compact Beretta Model 34. These are an Italian military handgun that served Italy's army through World War II and beyond, of course made by Beretta. Now the tiny size of this pistol would be pretty perfect for a small girl like Ellie, but when we get a closer look at the pistol here, we can tell for certain that is no Beretta Model 34. It is, however, clearly a Beretta Model 70 to be exact, and the M70 was also Ellie's primary firearm in the Last of Us video game. Here's Ellie with her M70 in the mirror, and here we get a glance at one of the bullets. The Beretta Model 70 is typically either chambered in 32 auto or 380 auto. By looking at the small size of this bullet, I'm going to say Ellie's example is most likely 32 auto, and that's actually a pretty smart choice for a small statured shooter. 32 auto has very little recoil. We get a good glance at the barrel end here, and in this shot we get to see Ellie's first time actually firing her pistol. That's her with it aimed at her unsuspecting victim. Funny enough, it almost looked like Ellie shot him straight in the butt. In this scene, Joel is instructing Ellie on the proper way to hold a handgun when firing, and here's a great shot of Ellie's iconic Beretta. As the season progresses, Ellie becomes more proficient in firearms and even gets the chance to squeeze off a couple rounds from horseback. Our next gun is an American sporting classic and one of the most predominantly used firearms in the show. That was Joel chambering around in his bolt-action Winchester Model 70 that he picked up from Bill's Armory. We get a good look at it here with Joel having it shouldered. It looks like this one has iron sights only. Another really nice side profile of this rifle. The Winchester Model 70 shows up everywhere in the second half of the first season of The Last of Us, and I think a lot of that has to do with how important of a role it played in the video game. Now, unfortunately, I haven't played the games because I don't own a PlayStation, but apparently the M70 is the main sniper rifle in that game. In the show, we see iron sight variants, scoped variants, synthetic stocks, wood stocks. There are a lot of Model 70s, and here's Joel using the one he picked up at Bill's. Later in that episode, Joel gets his hand on a scoped variant, and epic sniping ensues. Here's Joel with his newest acquisition, the scoped Winchester Model 70, and man, he puts that gun to work. I thought this was a fantastic sequence, one of my favorites from the show. It was almost like something out of a video game. Joel doing his best to escort and protect Ellie while she's trying to make her way to him, and that was a tough road. That particular scoped M70 ends up coming along on the journey. Here's Ellie in the frozen western United States with that same scoped Winchester M70, and a great side shot of it here with it slung over Joel's shoulder. As I alluded to a minute ago, there are a ton of Winchester Model 70s in the show. Here we have David and James, both armed with a Winchester Model 70, one without a scope, one with a scope, and it seems Winchesters were super popular in this town because this image has 5 Model 70s. Here's James perched up with his scoped Model 70. With the length of that bolt, I'm gonna guess this is probably a larger cartridge the rifle's chambered in, maybe 30-06, maybe 270, or who knows, maybe something else. One thing's for certain, it was powerful enough to stop a horse. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think this next rifle is also a Winchester Model M70. If it's not, you can tell me down in the comments. I have to mention this guy though, because he is absolutely ridiculous. He's carrying around a bolt-action rifle with no iron sights and no scope. There is literally no way to accurately aim this rifle. This guy's so dumb, I doubt he knows how to take the safety off. The next pistol was super easy to identify because it's an all-time classic. I almost excluded it from this video completely though, because I absolutely hate one of the characters that uses it. This is Kathleen. I do not like Kathleen. If you want to see why I don't like Kathleen, you need to watch the show. But Kathleen is holding a Beretta 92. The Beretta 92 is a world famous handgun. Of course, the United States Army adopted it as the M9, but they have literally been used by law enforcement and military all over the world, and they're even super popular on the civilian market. Good magazine capacity, accurate, reliable, chambered in 9mm, so ammo's easy to find. They are a really great gun for the apocalypse, but unfortunately Kathleen has chosen it for her primary sidearm. You can see it there in her holster, and she even gets to squeeze off a round. Luckily, Kathleen wasn't our only Beretta 92 wielder. It appears the Beretta 92 was kind of the standard service sidearm of Fedra in the series, but Joel actually picks this one up off of a Firefly. We can see him checking to see if a round is in the chamber here, and we get a decent side shot of Joel's Beretta 92 in this clip. If I've learned anything from this show, it's that you don't want to be on the other side of a gun Joel is holding.
You've just come after her.
This next clip is extremely short and has absolutely no relevance to the plot of the show, but I loved the gun they snuck in there. Did you catch that? Let's take a closer look. So in that extremely short 1-second clip, we catch this gate guard here with a rifle slung over his shoulder. And anybody that knows Milsurp Firearms will know that is a Mauser. And judging by that very characteristic sight hood, I'm gonna conclude that was a German Kar 98K. The Kar 98 is a bolt-action rifle chambered in 8mm Mauser, and it was the primary service arm of the German military in the Second World War. These are extremely collectible and rather expensive rifles in today's market, but they are super cool guns, and I'm so glad they decided to sneak a Milsurp into that episode the way that they did. There's been a ton of really excellent firearms scenes in this show so far, but we're going to end it out here with what I think might be the very best the show has to offer. Once again, here's Marlene and a couple Firefly rebels. On the left, we have an M4 rifle, but on the right, we have something very interesting. That's a Ruger Mini 14, and the action that happens with that rifle blew my mind. Per usual, Joel quickly makes that Mini 14 his, and we can see him with it here. Here's a nice shot of it shouldered. Notice that folding stock this example has, and the sort of heat shield handguard. Joel is an absolute Terminator with this Mini 14. Holy crap, that was awesome. Choosing the Mini 14 to use in this way was an interesting choice for the show. The Mini 14 gained popularity in the 1990s under the Clinton gun ban, but since then its popularity has steadily declined and it's been replaced by other, more modern rifles. It is, however, still semi-automatic, has full capacity magazines, and is chambered in the ubiquitous .223 Remington cartridge, so it might not be the best choice for a doomsday rifle, but it is most certainly not the worst. Let's just take a second here to admire Joel with his Mini 14. Unfortunately, it does eventually run out of ammunition and he has to ditch it. And with the end of the Mini 14, so goes the end of our list. That was the firearms of The Last of Us Season 1. The guns in The Last of Us are not just props, they're character-defining tools. Each weapon tells us something about the world, the people, and how they've adapted to survive. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It took a ridiculous amount of work to put it together, but it was a labor of love. If you did like it, please let me know down in the comments, because who knows, we might tackle Season 2 when it comes out. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more firearms content, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.